Do you ever scroll through your phone and suddenly realize 20 minutes disappeared? Do you feel anxious when you can't check your notifications? Here's a harder question. When you post something online, are you showing who you really are, or are you showing who you think people want to see? Most people believe they're in control of their social media use. They think they're just staying connected, just keeping up with friends, just having a little fun. But what if I told you that every time you open that app, you're feeding a psychological pattern that Carl Jung warned us about nearly a century ago? What if the version of yourself you present online isn't just fake? It's actively destroying your ability to know who you really are. Jung spent his entire career studying the human psyche. He wrote extensively in works like The Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious and Ion, researches into the phenomenology of the self. He understood something most people still don't grasp today. We're not one person. We're multiple selves, wearing different masks depending on who's watching. And social media? It's turned those masks into a prison we can't escape from. Jung called it the persona. It's the mask you wear in public, the version of yourself you show to the world. Everyone has one. Your work persona is different from your friend persona. Your family persona is different from your stranger persona. This is normal. This is how humans survive in social groups. But here's where it gets dangerous. Before social media, your persona had limits. You wore the mask at work for 8 hours. Then you came home. You performed at a party. Then you relaxed in private. The mask came on and off. There was breathing room. There was a separation between who you pretend to be and who you actually are. Social media destroyed that separation. Now the performance never ends. You wake up and check how many people liked your post. You craft the perfect caption. You delete and rewrite your comment 3 times to sound smarter, funnier, more likable. You angle your camera to hide the mess in your room. You filter your face until it barely looks like you anymore. And here's the terrifying part. You start to forget where the mask ends and where you begin. Jung warned that when the persona becomes too strong, it suffocates the true self. You become so identified with the image you're projecting that you lose access to your inner world. You stop asking, what do I actually feel? And start asking, how will this look to others? Every thought passes through a filter. Every emotion gets edited. Every experience gets flattened into content. Think about the last time you went somewhere beautiful. Did you experience it, or did you immediately think about how to photograph it? Did you feel the moment, or did you frame it for your story? That split second where you reach for your phone, that's the persona consuming your reality. Most people are living entirely in the persona now. They've spent so many years curating their image that they can't find their way back to who they are underneath. Their entire sense of self depends on external validation. Likes, comments, shares, views. These become the oxygen they breathe. Without them, they feel like they're suffocating. But the true self doesn't just disappear. It goes somewhere Jung called the shadow. The shadow is everything you reject about yourself. It's the anger you're not supposed to feel, the jealousy you're ashamed of, the desires you judge as wrong, the thoughts you think make you a bad person. Every part of yourself that doesn't fit the perfect image you're trying to project gets shoved down into the darkness. Here's what most people don't understand. The shadow doesn't shrink when you ignore it. It grows. Social media forces you to maintain this perfect persona 24/7. You have to be positive, successful, happy, winning. You can't show weakness. You can't show failure. You can't show the messy, complicated, contradictory truth of being human. So all those rejected parts of yourself, they pile up in the shadow. And then strange things start happening. You find yourself getting irrationally angry at people online. Someone posts about their success, and you feel rage instead of happiness. You watch someone's vacation photos and hatred bubbles up. You see someone express an opinion, and the urge to destroy them overwhelms you. These reactions feel like they come out of nowhere. But they don't. That's your shadow speaking. Jung explained this clearly. Whatever you refuse to acknowledge in yourself, you will project onto others. The parts of you that you reject become the things you attack in other people. The insecurity you won't admit makes you tear down everyone else's confidence. The envy you won't face makes you criticize anyone who achieves something. Social media is a shadow projection machine. Everyone is performing their perfect persona, and everyone is secretly seething with the rejected parts of themselves. The comment sections become battlegrounds. The quote tweets become weapons. Anonymous accounts become outlets for pure shadow energy with no accountability. And it gets worse. Because you're spending all your time in this state, your shadow starts bleeding into your real life. You become more judgmental, more critical, more anxious. You compare yourself to everyone. You feel inadequate constantly. You develop this baseline level of resentment that colors everything you experience. Jung said that integrating the shadow, acknowledging and accepting these rejected parts, is essential for psychological health. But social media makes shadow integration almost impossible. How can you face your darkness when you're forced to maintain the light 24/7? Now let's go deeper into something that might sound strange at first, but it explains why social media affects us so powerfully. Jung discovered what he called the collective unconscious. This isn't just your personal memories or experiences. It's deeper. It's the psychological patterns shared by all humans, across all cultures and all time. These patterns, Jung called them archetypes, live in everyone's mind. The hero, the mother, the trickster, the shadow, the wise old man. These aren't just stories. They're psychological structures that shape how we understand reality. Here's what social media tapped into. These archetypes spread like viruses. When you see someone living out the hero's journey online, something ancient in your brain responds. When you see someone playing the victim, your psychological patterns recognize it instantly. When you see someone embodying the lover, the warrior, the sage, your unconscious mind reacts before your conscious mind even understands what's happening. This is why certain types of content go viral. It's not random. Content that activates archetypal patterns spreads because it resonates in the collective unconscious. Everyone feels it. Everyone responds. The algorithm doesn't just track your personal preferences. It's learning to trigger universal human patterns. But here's the problem. These archetypes are supposed to develop naturally throughout your life. You're supposed to encounter them in myths, in stories, in real human relationships. You're supposed to integrate them slowly, thoughtfully, in a way that helps you grow. Social media throws all of them at you constantly, simultaneously, with no structure and no meaning. You scroll through 50 different archetypal patterns in 5 minutes. Hero, victim, trickster, sage, shadow, lover, they flash past in a chaotic stream. Your unconscious mind is trying to process all of them at once. It's overwhelming. It's fragmenting. And then there's another layer. Jung believed the collective unconscious connects all humans in a shared psychological field. When mass numbers of people experience the same psychological patterns simultaneously, it affects the collective psyche of humanity. Think about what happens when a major event goes viral. Millions of people experience the same emotional reaction at the same time. Outrage spreads like wildfire. Fear becomes contagious. Anxiety ripples through entire populations in hours. This isn't just individual psychology anymore. It's collective psychology, operating at a scale and speed that's never existed before in human history. We're all plugged into the same psychological network, activating each other's patterns, triggering each other's shadows, spreading archetypal energies without any conscious awareness of what we're doing. Jung would have been horrified and fascinated. Let's talk about something that happens to almost everyone on social media, but hardly anyone notices until it's too late. Jung called it ego inflation. Your ego is your sense of I. It's your identity, your self-concept, the part of you that says, this is who I am. A healthy ego is important. It gives you boundaries, agency, a sense of self. But when the ego becomes inflated, something dangerous happens. You start to believe you're more important than you are. Social media is an ego inflation machine. Every platform is designed to put you at the center of your own universe. Your profile, your posts, your photos, your thoughts, everything revolves around you. You become the main character of a story where everyone else is just an audience, and then the numbers start coming in. 50 likes, 100 likes, 1,000, 10,000. Someone shares your post. Someone quotes you. Someone makes you go viral. The dopamine hits your brain. Your ego swells. You start to feel significant, important, special. Here's what Jung understood. When your ego inflates, you lose touch with reality. You start to believe your online persona is your real self. You start to believe your follower count defines your worth. You start to believe your opinions matter more than they do. You develop this sense of grandiosity that has no foundation in actual reality. And then the opposite happens too. When your post doesn't perform well, when nobody likes your comment, when you lose followers, your ego crashes. You feel worthless. You spiral into shame and inadequacy. Your sense of self becomes completely dependent on external validation from strangers. This is what Jung called identification with the persona. You are no longer a person wearing a mask. You are the mask, and the mask is being held up by likes and comments and shares. Remove those and you collapse. Most people are cycling between ego inflation and ego collapse multiple times a day now. They post something and feel like a god when it performs well. They post something else and feel like nothing when it flops. Their emotional state is entirely controlled by the reactions of people they've never met. Jung spent years warning people about this. He said that true psychological health requires distinguishing between the ego and the self. The self is the totality of who you are, conscious and unconscious, persona and shadow, all of it. The ego is just one small part. When you identify completely with the ego, especially an ego that's artificially inflated by social media, you lose access to everything else. You become fragile, anxious, dependent. You need constant validation to maintain the illusion that you're okay. Here's something Jung knew that almost nobody talks about anymore. You need to be alone with yourself, not distracted, not entertained, not scrolling, alone. Jung called this active imagination. It's the practice of turning inward, away from the external world, and encountering the contents of your own unconscious mind. This is where psychological growth happens. This is where you integrate the shadow. This is where you distinguish between persona and self. This is where you become whole. But social media killed solitude. When was the last time you sat in silence with no phone? No screen, no input, just you and your thoughts. For most people, it's been years. Maybe decades. Maybe never. The moment you feel bored, you scroll. The moment you feel uncomfortable, you distract yourself. The moment you feel anything difficult, you reach for the dopamine dispenser in your pocket. You never have to be alone anymore. And that sounds like a gift, but it's a curse. Because without solitude, you never process anything. Every experience just stacks on top of the last one. Every emotion gets suppressed. Every thought gets interrupted. You're constantly consuming content but never digesting it. You're constantly reacting but never reflecting. Jung said that neurosis, psychological suffering, comes from unprocessed psychic material. All the things you've experienced but never integrated, all the emotions you've felt but never understood, all the parts of yourself you've encountered but never accepted, they pile up. They create pressure. They manifest as anxiety, depression, compulsive behavior, relationship problems, existential dread. The cure is simple. Turn inward. Face yourself. Process what needs to be processed. But social media makes this almost impossible. Your attention has been so fractured that you can't hold a thought for more than a few seconds. Your tolerance for discomfort has been so eroded that the moment you feel anything difficult, you reflexively escape. Your sense of self has become so externalized that looking inward feels like staring into a void. This is why so many people report feeling empty, hollow, like there's nothing inside. It's not that there's nothing there. It's that you've spent so long avoiding yourself that you've forgotten how to access your inner world. Jung warned that a person who never encounters their own depths remains superficial, fragmented and ultimately unfulfilled. No amount of external validation can fill that void. No amount of content can substitute for genuine self-knowledge. Jung believed that the ultimate goal of psychological development is what he called individuation. It's the process of becoming whole, of integrating all the scattered parts of yourself into a unified self. Most people never achieve it. But at least they had a chance. Social media is making individuation almost impossible for an entire generation. Here's why. Individuation requires continuity of consciousness. You need to be able to hold your attention on something long enough to understand it. You need to be able to feel an emotion fully, instead of immediately distracting yourself. You need to be able to follow a thought from beginning to end without interruption. But the average person now has an attention span of about 8 seconds. You can't integrate your psyche in 8-second bursts. Your consciousness has been fragmented into pieces. Every notification shatters your focus. Every scroll breaks your train of thought. Every context switch depletes your mental energy. You're not living one continuous experience anymore. You're living thousands of micro-experiences that never connect into a coherent whole. And it's not just attention. Your identity itself is fragmenting. You're performing different versions of yourself across different platforms. Your Instagram self is different from your Twitter self. Your LinkedIn self is different from your TikTok self. Each one requires different masks, different tones, different personas, and you're switching between them constantly. Jung said that when the psyche fragments, psychological suffering is inevitable. You lose the sense of inner coherence that makes you feel real. You lose the ability to know what you actually want, what you actually believe, who you actually are. Everything becomes performance. Everything becomes uncertain. This is why existential anxiety is skyrocketing. People don't know who they are anymore. They've spent so long being whatever gets the best reaction online that they've lost connection to any stable sense of self. The fragmentation goes even deeper than individual psychology. Jung believed humans need meaningful connection to something larger than themselves. Religion, philosophy, art, nature, community, these things give life coherence and purpose. They connect you to the collective unconscious in a healthy way. Social media offers a simulation of this connection. You feel like you're part of communities. You feel like you're engaged with important ideas. You feel like you're connected to humanity. But it's hollow. Real connection requires presence, vulnerability, depth. Online connection is shallow, performative, disposable. You're not actually encountering other humans. You're encountering their personas, their performances, their edited highlights. Everyone is alone together, scrolling through simulations of human connection while actual connection atrophies. Jung would say, we're experiencing collective fragmentation, not just individuals falling apart, but the psychological bonds that hold society together deteriorating. We're losing the shared myths, shared meanings, shared experiences that create genuine community. And into that void, the algorithm inserts itself as the new organizing principle. So where does this leave us? If Jung were alive today, what would he tell us to do? First, become conscious of the pattern. Everything I've described, the persona trap, the shadow projection, the ego inflation, the death of solitude, it all operates in unconsciousness. The moment you become aware of what's happening, you create the possibility of choice. Start noticing when you're in performance mode. Notice when you're about to scroll because you're uncomfortable. Notice when you're comparing yourself. Notice when you're projecting your shadow onto someone online. Just notice. Consciousness is the first step. Second, reclaim solitude. Put the phone down. Sit in silence. Let yourself be bored. Let yourself be uncomfortable. Don't escape. Don't distract. Just be present with whatever arises. This will feel unbearable at first. Your nervous system has been trained to seek constant stimulation. But if you persist, something remarkable happens. You start to encounter yourself again. Real thoughts emerge. Real feelings surface. The parts of you that have been buried under the noise start to speak. Jung called this turning inward, the most important work a person can do. It's not indulgent. It's not selfish. It's essential for psychological health. Third, integrate your shadow. Stop pretending you're only the good parts. Stop rejecting the messy, complicated, contradictory aspects of being human. You have darkness in you. Everyone does. The question is whether you acknowledge it or whether it controls you from the shadows. Start by admitting things you've been ashamed of. Not publicly, just to yourself. I'm jealous. I'm vain. I'm angry. I'm scared. These aren't moral failures. They're human experiences. When you acknowledge them, they lose their power over you. Fourth, distinguish between persona and self. You are not your social media profile. You are not your follower count. You are not the performance. Underneath all the masks, there's a real person. That person existed before social media and will exist after. Reconnect with that person. Ask yourself, what do I actually feel? Not what I should feel. Not what looks good to feel, but what I actually feel. What do I actually want? What actually matters to me? These questions sound simple, but for most people they're impossibly difficult now. That's how disconnected we've become. Fifth, create conscious boundaries. You don't have to delete everything, but you do have to regain control. Set specific times for social media. Turn off notifications. Remove apps from your phone. Create friction between you and the scroll. The algorithm wants zero friction. It wants you to access it instantly, unconsciously, compulsively. Creating friction creates space. Space for consciousness. Space for choice. Sixth, seek genuine connection. Replace online simulation with real presence. Have conversations without your phone. Be with people without documenting it. Experience moments without turning them into content. Jung believed that genuine encounter with another person, real presence, real vulnerability, is transformative. It's how we see ourselves reflected accurately, instead of through the distorted mirror of social media. Finally, pursue individuation. Remember that the goal isn't to become perfect, it's to become whole. That means accepting all of yourself. Light and shadow, strength and weakness, beauty and ugliness. It means integrating the fragments into a coherent self. This is lifelong work. Jung spent decades on his own individuation and said he never finished. But the work itself is meaningful. The process itself brings psychological health. Social media wants you fragmented. It wants you performing. It wants you anxious and inadequate and constantly seeking validation. Because that keeps you scrolling. Individuation is the opposite. It's about becoming independent of external validation. It's about finding coherence within yourself. It's about becoming real. Jung died in 1961, decades before social media existed, but everything he discovered about the human psyche predicted exactly what would happen when we created these platforms. He understood that humans are vulnerable to losing themselves in personas. He understood that the shadow grows when rejected. He understood that ego inflation leads to psychological collapse. He understood that without solitude and self-reflection, neurosis is inevitable. In his final years, Jung had a vision of humanity's future. He saw that technological progress was accelerating faster than psychological development. He warned that if humans didn't learn to integrate the unconscious, if they didn't pursue individuation, if they didn't become conscious of the psychological forces shaping their lives, then technology would control them instead of serving them. He was right. Social media broke our minds because we gave it access to our unconscious without understanding what that meant. We thought we were just connecting with friends. We didn't realize we were fragmenting our sense of self, amplifying our shadows, and losing access to everything that makes us human. But Jung also believed in the human capacity for transformation. He believed that consciousness can be reclaimed. He believed that even in the darkest psychological situations, individuation remains possible. The question is whether you're willing to do the work. Are you willing to put down the phone and sit with yourself? Are you willing to face your shadow instead of projecting it? Are you willing to distinguish between who you're performing as and who you actually are? These aren't easy questions. The answers require sacrifice, discomfort, real change. But the alternative is spending the rest of your life as a fragment, performing for algorithms, controlled by unconscious forces you never acknowledge, slowly losing touch with everything that makes you real. Jung's work offers a map back to wholeness, but you have to be willing to follow it. The choice is yours.